I've lived in many metro areas, and in every metro area I've lived in, whenever, wherever there was a successful Black business environment, it was stripped. It was knocked down for a freeway. You're just looking at disparate impact in lending, in mortgage lending. At every turn, the possibility of building wealth has been thwarted for African American people. And it's insidious. That leads directly to the racial wealth gap today. I had a need. Whether it was going to be accepted or not, I had a need to do something. Racial wealth gap is, I would best describe it as the accumulated difference in average wealth comparing white households and African American households, and as well as Indigenous households. There are about 85 million white households. If you take the midpoint of those households, the midpoint wealth among them is about $284,000. You take the midpoint wealth among African American households, and I think there are about maybe 15 million African American households. But the midpoint would be about $44,000. And among Indigenous households, it's in the 20s, 29,000 actually. If all the wealth across the U.S. was spread evenly, if everybody had the same opportunity to accumulate wealth, that wealth would be about $244,000. And that is the wealth gap. It's a reflection of the wealth differences that have accumulated over time.
I am a very avid reader of all things historical. I've always focused on the Civil War. The disappointment to me is what happened after the Civil War. The Reconstruction era kind of finally died out about 1876. And that was, I think, an opportunity to advance the emancipation of the former slaves and create conditions of equality in the South. But it would have taken a real concentrated effort, and the effort just died out in 1876. I think it led me to the conclusion that some restorative justice would be a good idea.
In the case of the treaties that were made between the government and the Native American tribes, when those were put into place, everybody said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give this money for the land that you're giving to us. And what happened? Well, a lot of chicanery, quite frankly, with those people that had the goods and services that the Native Americans wanted, charging the Native Americans at a much higher price than they were worth. And then the government giving the money to the traders instead of to the Native Americans, first to pay the bills that were allegedly due them, and leaving a fraction for the people that were supposed to get them. And that happened in many, many instances. And it's one of the reasons for the 1862 uprising of the Native Americans in Minnesota against the settlers. They weren't given what they had been promised. You can't heal it unless you give the people what they want as you had originally agreed to do.
The main engine of the wealth gap is wealth itself and the earnings on that wealth. So given that wealth disparity or wealth gap represents a slice of wealth, it's naturally going to grow with prosperity.
The ideas around being able to recognize the wealth gap in this country really has been generated here at the Synod level, which is the Synod of 16 presbyteries, and Oak Grove is one congregation in the midst of one of those presbyteries.
We started in 1988 with an endowment fund of $21,000. We were lucky. $21,000, 1988. That's That's a sizable amount of money. It's over $1 million right now. So if we can let other people start with that, it just will continue to grow. We have the ability to invest it. And I think that giving others that ability is just going to help them immensely. So is it a leap of faith? I don't know. We have the luxury of putting it into the stock market and riding out the waves. I think giving that to other groups who have clearly earned it is the right thing to do.
Our financial assets truly don't belong to us. As Christians, we should know that already. We should affirm that. Oak Grove, of course, stands out as one that has discerned what restorative action actually means in terms of the assets of the congregation, their distribution of wealth, and the values that all the members of the congregation hold to that.
Restorative actions is a credible witness, especially in the sense that they help people understand that Christian people in the United States are not in a position to be philanthropists or donors or benefactors when it comes to people of African descent and indigenous nations in this country.
Restorative action is also, I think, another opportunity where we as indigenous nations open the conversation to say, we have a shared history with Afro-Americans beginning back in that history, because the doctrine of discovery originally was talking about the explorers in islands off of the African coast, and the Presbyterian Church were able to say to people, okay, you always want to talk about, let's look at the numbers. Let's see where the power of those numbers has really impacted our communities. And so that's where that aspect of the wealth gap is important, to be able to talk about it in terms of a century ago, where we are now, and since the civil rights movement of the 1960s.
Restorative actions is not reparations. Reparations is a larger project that we are working toward. Restorative actions is about making ourselves into a credible witness for the project, the larger project of reparations.
Restorative actions wrestled for a long time to figure out what the verb would be to describe what people are doing with their wealth when that wealth comes into the possession of the Afro-American Trust and the indigenous trusts. And we finally landed on the language of surrender, because we wanted to underscore the theological reality of repentance that's inherent in realizing that many people are the beneficiaries of stolen ancestral wealth. And although people, for the most part, work hard for what they have, they've been set up in such a way as non-Africans and non-indigenous people in the United States so that their hard work actually amounts to something, and so that their legacies become something that they can pass on to future generations. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wealth, and there's nothing wrong with success, but succeeding within a system that is already set up to see that your hard work adds up to something while other people are continually born in an economic deficit. That's the credible witness, the witness of realizing that I'm not giving, but I'm actually unburdening myself by surrendering wealth that I wouldn't have in the first place if others had been treated with equity.
Those dollars are then invested or, entrusted in the work of restorative actions. And one of our great partners is, of course, the Presbyterian Foundation, as being the vehicle to receive those dollars and to hold them for the use of the trust groups, the Afro-American and the American Indian trust groups. Those who will benefit from those dollars should be the ones who will determine and control how those dollars are going to be distributed and used. Don't look at restorative action as if it's something that can be quickly accomplished, that it's a charitable giving that you can, hand some money over. It is really redesigning again to put into greater balance all who are related, all who are recognizing that they're here now because of what others have sacrificed before them. Will the efforts at Oak Grove be recognized? Absolutely. We want other people to talk with them to say, how could you make that decision?
Don't try to go it alone. Find people who are already involved in it. Be in conversation and community and relationship with them. Learn what can be adapted to your context and just get going. But don't delay thinking, well, we don't really know how to do it. Well, we didn't either. We just got going.